I took my kids and I left. And I went back home to my mom's, and I didn't want to tell her what truly happened.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of waited, but I did have a concussion. So gosh, 2-3 days, I couldn't even get out of bed. Like, I stayed in bed. I was sick.
Did you go to the hospital at all?
No. See, before, within our relationship, I took charges out on him. But one of the last times that I did, they threatened to take my kids away because we both were having issues. So I didn't pursue it anymore. I just never went and did anything else. So I didn't want to go to the hospital. I didn't want to go to the cops. I literally went back home to my mom.
Everything is working out for me. It's working out for you, too. It just takes believing that it is. We can have, be, and do anything. The key is to care about how you feel and choose to feel good right now. I'm here today with Sarah Parker, and she's a fellow podcaster. The name of her podcast is But First Coffee. And isn't that relatable? Because, yeah, we all need to have our cup of joe, right? Sarah, I really want to thank you for being on the show today, taking the time and sharing your story with me and all my listeners. I really appreciate it. So can you just take a couple minutes and tell everybody who you are and what you're doing, what your podcast is about?
Okay, like you said, my name is Sarah. My podcast, But First Coffee, it's mainly a focus on mental health and accountability. I just feel like the title can be kind of misleading, but it's always you start with coffee and then you handle your problems. So that's kind of hand in hand where I got the idea from. With me, I've went through a lot of trauma with past relationships. And I think it's easy to blame others, but sometimes you just got to dig deep and kind of look into yourself.
That's what you focus on. That's your message for the podcast.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I love that. And I kind of wanted to let you kind of get into that a little bit. Let's hear your story and how that got you to this realization that was really a healthier way for you to approach your mental health rather than feeling like a victim and blaming others. I think that's a really good message.
Yes, it is. Like I said, my story starts long before I was really in like a bad relationship, basically. I was adopted. So I think that plays a lot into the way that I am. And then I obviously got into a horrible relationship with my kid's father. It was physically abusive and mentally abusive, but I obviously stayed because I felt like I had to because we had kids.
Yeah.
But one of the last times he hit me, he gave me a concussion. And, it was really scary because, I still had to go to sleep next to this man and he wouldn't let me leave. And so when he got up the next day, I decided, I was like, I can't do this. My child was there, witnessed it.
Well, how long were you in this relationship?
6.5 years.
Okay. And how old was your child at the time?
My oldest was 2 at the time, and my youngest was 1 because they're 24 months apart. So
very young. You have 2 very young children that you're taking care of.
And, he had a drug problem too. And that kind of led to his behavior. But just looking back, I think, I tried to blame him, but it was really me. I shouldn't have stayed. The first time he ever put a hand on me, I should have left.
When did that happen? How far into your relationship?
Oh gosh, it was 2.5 months in. We didn't
early.
Even, yeah. And I remember we were sitting in my car and having a normal conversation, and he slapped me. And I remember thinking, what did I do wrong? But I didn't do anything. He did. But then, I kind of just was like, well, I must have said something. I must have did something. but it wasn't me. It was definitely all him at that time.
Yeah. I'm kind of curious because you led with being adopted and then moved into this abusive relationship. I'm wondering, what do you think is the connection there?
It's definitely, I think abandonment issues, you find somebody and you connect with them and you don't want them to leave. You feel like you have to keep them because you don't want to be alone.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. And did you feel that way as a child growing up? Did you know you were adopted the whole time?
Yes, my she was actually my great aunt that adopted me.
Okay, so family.
It within my family,
Mhm.
but it was still I felt alone. Like you feel different even though you have like other siblings. It's just like you don't really know them, you're not really related. So it's a totally different feeling. So then you get into a relationship and you want to keep that person.
I can see that. And did you get together with the father of your kids at a fairly young age?
I was 23.
Okay, so had you been out on your own for a while?
No, actually, I lived with my mom. I went to college, and then my mom let me live with her. And I was in other relationships before him, but they were with like people obviously that cheated, treated me like crap, made me feel worthless. But he was probably the one that really did the worst damage because he was physically abusive.
When you say you lived with your mom, was this your biological mom or your adoptive mom?
My adopted mom.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have any connections with my real mom. I knew her for a little bit and she tried to stay connected with me, but it was very toxic. I chose not to stay within that.
Okay. The reason I'm asking is because I kind of was forming this picture in my mind when you're talking about your story of you living with your mom, your adoptive mom and your family, which are your cousins, but being raised like your siblings. And then here comes this guy who comes into your life and now you're moving out to be with him, I'm assuming. And there's a pressure there that comes with I can't go back home. I have to make this work. I'm out on my own now. Is that something that was true for you?
That really plays a lot into the way that I am now. But then I don't think I necessarily thought of it like that. I think I just really, you're at that young age, so you want to be on your own anyways.
Yeah.
When we got together, it was definitely pressure to keep the relationship going.
Were you reliant on him, like financially? Did you have a job?
No, he was reliant on me financially.
Oh, you were taking care of him.
Yes, the everything I worked, I'm the one that had the car. Um, I'm the one that provided the food. I'm the one when we went out to eat, I paid. And I think it's like I said before, it's you become a people pleaser because you want to keep that person. So you're afraid to lose them, so you do anything and everything to make them happy.
I want to understand that more. I think that's the part right there, the wanting to keep that person. What was it that you wanted to keep?
That's what still looking back, I don't understand that either really. It was just you feel like if you lose that person, like you're alone. And I think for me, I never wanted to be alone.
So, on the podcast, I talk a lot about spirituality and something that you were talking about in this relationship where you were afraid of being alone and there was a kind of dependency there. It was making me think of something that I talk about because in spirituality, so I'm just going to tell you what I believe, and if it doesn't resonate with you, that's okay. Um, I believe that we each have a higher self or an inner being, which would be like our soul or our spirit. And this is that power, that source energy power that some people refer to as God, but it's in all of us. And we're all connected in that way. And we don't know, a lot of us don't know when we're born and when we're raised that connecting with our own inner self and our higher self would allow us to feel love without looking externally. And it seems to me like in this relationship, And even growing up for you, you really wanted this feeling of love and security and safety. And we don't know about this connection. And so we look to other people in order to form that when really it's inside of us. And if we were to seek it there, we wouldn't need anybody else. And so I'm highlighting that now just because that dependency, I think, was at the root of this abuse that you tolerated until you didn't, until you decided, I'm not taking it anymore, and I'm taking over my life, and I'm not going to live in this way that's hurtful anymore. So let's talk about that. Tell me about that moment. I know you mentioned it a little bit where you were like, I'm not doing this anymore. So that morning,
When he was doing like side jobs. So when he left, I didn't take anything with me. I took my kids and I left. And I went back home to my mom's, and I didn't want to tell her what truly happened.
mhm.
So I kind of waited, but I did have a concussion. So gosh, 2, 3 days, I couldn't even get out of bed. Like, I stayed in bed. I was sick.
Did you go to the hospital at all?
No, before, within our relationship, I took charges out on him. But one of the last times that I did, they threatened to take my kids away because we both were having issues. So I didn't pursue it anymore. I just never went and did anything else. So I didn't want to go to the hospital. I didn't want to go to the cops. I literally, I went back home to my mom. So it was just, then I didn't want to deal with it. It was enough. My kids didn't deserve that. And as much as I felt like I needed to keep my family together, it was not healthy. And that really, it changed me a lot. Like, I started looking at things differently. But honestly, it wasn't up until I was 33 that I found, people say you need to find self-love and that stuff, but it's more than self-love. You got to become accountable. You've got to look at, what you've done in life, what you put up with, what you will put up with, and you just got to stand up for it and stand on it. Like, you can't say, well, maybe, or, well, this person's doing this, or no, you got to do it for yourself.
Yeah. And there's a great deal of freedom that comes with that when you finally do step into that.
Yes, it is. I don't tolerate as much as I used to. And
Yeah.
I tell my kids that. I'm like, nowadays, you can't meet people where they are. You've got to say, hey, you got to meet me in the middle. And that's where I think now I look at life. Like, I'm not going above and beyond all the time for people if they're not doing it for me too.
Real quick, before I get back to this topic, I want to know if you have a product or service that aligns with the content here on the Dr. Williams podcast. If so, this space could be your advertisement. Reach out to me by going to drwilliamspodcast.com. Okay, back to the episode. Yeah, I was talking to my husband recently about reciprocation, and I find that that's kind of a big thing for me in a relationship. If I'm doing a lot of giving, which I'm happy to do, I love to give, in a relationship, but if somebody's just taking, and I'm not feeling any kind of reciprocation, I usually fade away from that kind of relationship. And the other way around, if somebody's giving a lot to me, I feel like reciprocating, and I really want to reciprocate back because I'm like, this is somebody who's investing in this relationship, and that means something to me.
Mm-hmm. Relationships to me are all about investments. You can't just, what I learned is you can't do it all by yourself. It's not a one-way street. It literally takes two people.
So I'm curious how he responded. So after you left, how did he respond to that?
He was pretty mad. It was a lot of name calling, down talking, and it was a couple years we went through it back and forth. And I never got into a relationship, but I did let him see his kids with his mom and grandma present. Like, he was never allowed to, I didn't feel comfortable leaving my kids with him alone, which he would never harm them, but it was just something at that time I didn't feel comfortable doing. But there was times, where he tried to get me to come back, but it wasn't gonna happen.
No, you had made that decision at that
Yeah,
point. You were like, I'm done.
I was done, and it's been like 12 years. We haven't been together. It's been a long time.
But you've been co-parenting.
He is in prison now,
Oh,
so we don't co-parent. I co-parent with his grandma. They get my, and I do that with them because I didn't think it'd be fair to take my kids completely away from that side of the family. So my kids do see his grandma.
okay. Well, wow. I mean, that changes the whole dynamic. Now he's kind of just out of the picture.
Yes.
And how do your kids deal with that?
They have a hard time sometimes. It's very hard for them to understand because I was never the mom that talked down on him. I always said I want them to decide how they look at him. My oldest has some trauma because she did witness a lot. So there are certain things like if someone gets too loud, if someone starts yelling, it kind of triggers an anxiety within her. But we really don't talk about them.
But now you said that you're in a new relationship and this is a healthy relationship?
Yes,
Okay. So now you're modeling what a healthy relationship looks like. And you've been with this person for a while?
2 years.
Okay.
Yeah,
And your kids like him?
yeah, they do. It's different. We hear the whole "you're not my dad."
Oh, well, sure. That's
Yeah,
power.
yeah, hear that a lot. But we try to do a lot of positivity for them. We try to show them what a relationship is supposed to be like. I don't yell. I refuse to yell, fight. It's just one thing I said when I got into a new relationship was, I'm not doing it. I'm not yelling. I'm not fighting. We can talk, but we're not yelling or fighting. And if we do, or if it starts, I'm walking away.
That's incredible. And I'm sitting here thinking I should probably do something like that. I mean, I yell at my kids because they don't listen to me. And I don't like yelling. It's awful. I hate it. And I'm always like, "Ugh."
It's hard because my boyfriend, he's not like a yeller, but he does get loud. He will raise his voice to the girls. But I'm like, no, you can talk to them. They're human. They're people. You talk to them. Like, I don't yell unless I have to, especially in the mornings when we're running late.
Yep.
Like that, yeah, sometimes. But I still, like, if they get in trouble or if they do something wrong, I'm not yelling. We're gonna sit and communicate like humans. Like, you're a person, I'm a person. Let's talk, and I will get on your level and talk to you.
Let's talk about the accountability thing. Now, you said that this was a big thing for you to step into this and become accountable for your experience. It's kind of hard to swallow, I have to tell you, because I mean, you were in an abusive relationship. You were not the abuser. How do you take accountability for that?
We have to become accountable, as in my trauma. Yes, I have it, but it's not going to dictate the rest of my life.
Okay. So this is when you had mentioned when we spoke before about how we carry impressions with us.
Yes.
Okay. Tell me what you think about that. What are your thoughts about that for not just yourself, but anybody who's in a relationship like that and then moving on from it?
I think it's easy, like I said, when we get into another relationship, if we have that trauma and we're holding it, it's easy to carry it into another relationship. As far as, you all go through that whole first couple months, it's a whole facade of puppy love. Then you start getting comfortable and true colors start coming out. I think some people, as far as the impressions, they will, I guess, put it on somebody else, like the yelling or the screaming, the name calling. I think that's easy to do if you have that past trauma. because you're hurt from it. So you want to lash out at somebody else, but you can't. That's where you have to learn, okay, that's not who I am. That's who that person was that did this to me. And it's not fair of me to do it to the next person.
So it's basically like owning your trigger and not taking it out on somebody who didn't form the trigger.
Yes.
That's a really healthy way to move into a new relationship. I think that's going to make sense to a lot of people to hear it that way, because a lot of people do that. They do move into a new relationship and then they're like, "Hey, you can't treat me like that because I was treated like this before." And that's a trigger for me. But okay, for instance, my husband and I had a little bit of that. He had some trust issues because of a relationship that he was in before. And I am like the most trustworthy person ever. And I know that, right? Because I know myself. And so I was telling him, like, you can trust me. You don't have to have this fear response with me. But it took some communicating, and it took some acceptance of that for him to finally let his guard down and lay that to rest with the past relationship, and then step into, okay, I'm going to trust Katie, because I mean, that's what you have to do if you want to have a fulfilling relationship.
Yes.
But I think anybody could understand how that would be difficult given your situation.
It's hard. And like I said, it's something that I'm still working on. I still have the certain triggers, and it's not just from that relationship, it's from other relationships too. But that's when I have to step back and I'm like, no, it's a trigger. I need to calm down. It's not what it is, or, because I have trust issues too, because I was cheated on so many times. It's like so much stuff, but you have to kind of communicate with that person, like you said, talk it out, and just, kind of own it.
Well, it sounds like you have a lot of introspection. You're really kind of analyzing things from moment to moment, and realizing that you have that about you. And that's huge.
It definitely is. My boyfriend says I definitely call him out on a lot of stuff because he used, but I'm like, "Hey, we're not doing that. We're gonna sit down and talk about it." Like, so he has to deal with a lot now.
But you know what? You're doing things in a really healthy way. And I think that he probably, I don't know him or haven't spoken with him, but I'm sure he appreciates that because he knows what he gets with you.
It's all real. There's no faking it. There's no getting mad or not talking about it. We're gonna talk.
Yeah. You don't hide it. You're like, okay, here's something. We got to talk about it.
Yeah, I don't hide nothing. We're talking about it.
Let's say that there's some people listening right now who either have experienced abusive relationships in the past and they're still dealing with it, trying to find that healthy relationship, or they're in it right now. They're in an abusive relationship and they don't know how to get out of it, but they want to. What would your advice be?
If you're in one and you feel like you can't get out, you can. You don't have to stay. There's always a way out. Um, I would say it's horrible, but sometimes you just have to leave it. You have to leave everything and start new. It's hard, but starting over fresh, I've always heard an ending is a new beginning. So you can't, it's unhealthy. It's not good. It's always when you get out, it's for the better. The sooner, the better.
What about for those people that are carrying it with them? They're carrying the abusive relationship, like dragging it behind them like an anchor and trying to enter into a new healthy relationship, and they just can't seem to do it.
It's hard too, but communication. If you're going to go into a new relationship and you're already maybe talking to someone or with someone, I would be open and honest about everything that you've had to go through and talk it out with that person and go from there. Because each person's different, but communication's always key. I talk everything out, like everything. I'm a scheduler too, so talking it out is the best.
So you put it on the schedule. So at 3:35, we're going to sit down and talk about this.
It's going to be a 45-minute long conversation, so about 4:30, 5 o'clock.
That's funny. Well, I think that's wonderful advice. There was something else that came up when we spoke about empowerment. Do you feel like you have been empowered in making this move to step away from him and really take ownership of your own life, your own mental health, just your well-being in general? Was that an empowering moment for you?
It was. I think not just with that relationship, I've been in a lot of bad relationships, but I have had to start over a bunch. And I think that once you go through something so traumatic and you come out of it on the other side, it's definitely a different feeling. It makes you feel empowered. It makes you feel like there's nothing you can't do.
Do you feel now that you're in a better mental health space?
I still would say I do have some PTSD with certain things, but for the most part, I think I'm definitely coming through. Like I'm making it all the way to the other side.
Okay. Any final words for the audience?
There's that saying, there's light at the end of the tunnel. I just told my boyfriend this the other day. You're on a train and you're going to make stops along, you get off, maybe have to get back on that train. But when you get off, you learn something, you take it with you. So I feel like, yes, there's light at the end of the tunnel and you're going to make it. And you took those little stops with you.
Check out Sarah's podcast, But First Coffee. And are you on all the platforms?
I am on Spotify, Apple, and Amazon.
Wonderful. Well, it's been a pleasure talking with you. I want to share my gratitude that you are so open about your story, and I feel like it's going to help a lot of people. So thank you for sharing who you are.
Thank you so much for having me on.
If you're enjoying the podcast, you can show your support by leaving a rating and a review on your favorite podcast platform. You also can follow Dr. Williams' podcast on all social media platforms and subscribe on YouTube and by going to www.drwilliamspodcast.com. Deliberate creation is the key to living life satisfied, and that is my wish for all of you.